Number 1. So this story happened to my mother's friend in Korea about 10 years ago. Every time I hear this story, I get the chills. My mom's friend lived in an apartment complex in Seoul. She was a stay-at-home mom with a young daughter, and her husband worked during the days. One day she was coming home from running errands with her daughter and got onto the elevator in her building. When she got on, she noticed there was a man wearing a cap and a yellow raincoat. He kept his head low so that she really couldn't see his face. She immediately felt really uneasy, and she made her daughter stand to her side, furthest away from the man. What made her even feel more uncomfortable was that when she pressed the button for her floor, there was no other lit number. And on top of that, she noticed that he was carrying something wrapped inside of a newspaper close to his side. Things started to click inside her head. She started to panic and decided to take out her cell phone and pretend that she was calling home to her husband, who was obviously not really at home and at work. She started saying things like, "Oh, I'm on the elevator and about to get off. Can you get the door for me?" and making it seem like her husband was waiting at home. When the elevator did reach her floor, she quickly got off and grabbed her daughter and started to walk as fast as she could to her apartment. She noticed that the man also got off on her floor and was slowly following her down the hallway. When my mom's friend got to her door, she started to bang on it and shout, "Hey, I'm home. Please open the door," and just sort of pretended like her husband was coming to answer the door. Upon seeing this, the man in the yellow raincoat slowly walked back towards the elevator. When he seemed to be far away enough, my mom's friend quickly picked up her daughter and slid open her door's passcode. This is usually how people get into their homes in Korea. She started to frantically punch in her key code, but the problem was that the buttons would make sounds, so the man knew that no one was coming to answer the door for her. He turned around and started to run back towards her. My mom's friend at this point was practically screaming, and when she finally got her door open, the first thing she did was throw her daughter through the door. When she got in herself, she saw that the man was pretty much inches from the door, but she managed to shut it and lock it before he could wedge his hand or weapon into the door. Afterwards, looking through the door's peephole, she saw that the man was walking away towards the elevator. Several months later, my mom's friend was watching the news, and there was a coverage on the capture of a serial killer named Yoo Young-chul, who used to kill a lot of prostitutes. She told my mom that she would never forget the dread that she felt when she saw the all too familiar yellow raincoat and hat he was wearing when apprehended. Number 2. Let me start off by saying that I'm usually a cautious person. I'm female, and this happened a few years ago. I was in a big city in Japan, starting a new job. I decided to go out on the town with a few new friends. It turned into a bit of bar hopping, something I usually don't do, but the few drinks I had made me less cautious. Dumb. We ended up at a club dancing until late. I was ready to go to the hotel, but no one else was. No worries. I was sure I could walk back easily. That's when he appeared. A Japanese man about my age. In broken English, he offered me a ride. Even drunk, I said no, but he followed me. I ducked into a convenience store, but he still followed. Somehow, I ended up in his car. It was like I blinked, and I went from the store to the car. I tell him where I'm going. Not the hotel, but the station nearby. I wasn't going to give him my actual hotel location. I blacked out and woke up in a warehouse district. I point out on his GPS that he was clearly going the wrong way, and I tell him to turn around. But he pulls over. He says he wants to talk. Not playing, I tell him to back the fuck off. Noticing the doors were locked, with no apparent way to unlock them from my side, and not wanting to wait for him to make the first move, I slammed my elbow into his mouth. I reach across his body, unlocked the door, and threw myself out of the car. I ignored his cries of pain and him asking me why I hurt him, and I legged it. I ran off the path behind the bushes, staying in the shadows. I have no idea how long I ran for, but I know that I've never run for so far or fast without slowing. The warehouse district was empty, but I saw a light dead ahead. I hoped the parking garage that was nearby had a guard who could help. Instead, I stumbled upon an off-duty cab driver who was parked on the side of the road and threw myself at his cab. Long story short, what should have been a 5-minute cab ride from the club turned into a 40-minute $50 cab ride. Ladies, be aware, even in a country with a reputation for safety, bad things can still happen. Be on your guard. Number 3.
So recently, I went on a trip with my family to Japan. Overall, I really enjoyed myself and thought it was a beautiful country. But one thing happened to me that kind of put me off. I had recently come out of hospital before the trip. Recently meaning 2 days out of hospital. I got my appendix removed and blood sucked out of my stomach. So, as you can probably imagine, I wasn't in the best shape and very sore and incredibly tired. My family had decided they would go out and explore a temple, but I stayed back in the hotel because I was in far too much pain and needed to rest. About 2 hours after my family had left, I decided I was hungry. Seeing a 7-Eleven outside of my hotel window, I decided to go and get something to eat because it wasn't too much of a walk, and there was no room service or anything. So I set off on my small journey to get some food. After buying some kebab things and a strange-looking cake, I went to the small seating area to sit and eat because I was too tired to walk back at that moment. It was just me and an older Japanese man sitting behind me. I felt someone touching my hair. I turned around, and he started trying to tell me how beautiful my hair was. But his English was terrible, so I just smiled and said thank you. This wasn't uncommon, as I have strawberry blonde hair, and a lot of people in Japan seem to be fascinated with it. People always seem to come up and touch it. I got back to eating, but soon after, the man moved next to me and started trying to talk to me again. To be completely honest, I sort of felt obliged to try and communicate because he seemed so cute and old and innocent. I just wanted to be nice. Bad idea. Shortly after he decided to take a seat next to me, he starts saying short phrases in English. Incredibly sexual short phrases. His English seemed to have gotten a lot better. He continued to ask me for sex and tell me I was beautiful, and I was very uncomfortable at this point, and got up and left. At this point, he decided it would be a really cool and fun idea to come outside with me. I was tired and needed more pain medication, so at this point I just couldn't deal with his shit. I wanted to go back to the hotel and nap. I turned around and began cursing and telling him to leave me alone. All of a sudden, he got this very angry look on his face and actually spat on me. I was so furious at this point that I turned around, ignored the pain in my stomach, and walked home so angrily I probably looked like a cartoon character. So, although this isn't as creepy as some of the other stories I've heard here, the freaky old guy is definitely someone I'd prefer to never meet again.
Number 4. This is actually my mother's story, but I'll be damned if she's going to let me forget it. When I was a teenager, my parents were quite wealthy. My dad was a salesman for a high-end Chinese tech company, and he would frequently take trips overseas. There was this one time my mother chose to go with him. She had never been to China before, and there was some opportunity to get out of Hong Kong and experience the culture of the mainland. After a luxurious start to the vacation, my parents hopped on a plane and headed over to Shenzhen. Now, my mom is a pretty streetwise lady by US standards. She's managed to survive some pretty intense living conditions and navigate through the ghetto well enough, so I think she got incredibly arrogant here. At some point, when my dad was speaking with his superiors in a meeting, she asked if she could head out alone to do some shopping. My dad's boss was apprehensive and told her that if she really wanted to take down his number in case anything happened. While shopping, she was lured to a back alley shop that sold a pretty diverse amount of designer knockoffs and bootleg DVD box sets, etc. I'm a huge fan of TV, and apparently she thought this would be a great opportunity to pick me up the first 5 seasons of Scrubs on DVD. It was nothing crazy. There were places like that all over China, but apparently she chose the wrong back alley shop. When she completed her purchase, a legit-looking cab pulled up and offered her a ride. The cab ride was quiet, and it didn't take my mom long to realize that something was wrong. The man wasn't driving her back the way she came from, and I think he expected her not to have remembered the way to her hotel. There was a second man in the passenger seat with a stern look on his face. The men spoke to each other in Chinese and did not acknowledge her when she spoke to them. It took her less than half a mile before she tried to escape the car, but the doors were locked from the outside. The men began yelling at her in Chinese and threatening her. They took her purse and removed the money inside it and began talking among themselves. With one last resort, my mom called my dad's boss, who began speaking to them in Chinese on speakerphone. The men were spooked almost immediately. They stopped the car, grabbed my mom, and literally threw her out of the car onto the street. They then tossed money at her and drove off. When she got back, she learned a few things. The money was counterfeit. They kept all her real money. The men were part of the Chinese mafia, according to my dad's boss. People have a tendency to go missing in situations like that all of the time, especially tourists. He said if she had not made that phone call, she would likely be dead or abducted. The fake cab scam was actually quite a common method of these abductions. My dad's boss has some questionable but scary pull among the criminal underground of mainland China, or at least knew how to put the fear of God into them. She still has no idea what he said to them. To this day, she still gives me a lot of flack, says that Scrub box set nearly cost her her life. Number 5. I'm a guy who was visiting Tokyo with a couple of friends. One night, we decided at the request of one of our friends to go check out the Roppongi bar scene. As we were heading into the neighborhood, some Nigerian guys were hollering at us trying to get us to come into their bar. This is a pretty common thing in a lot of the more touristy areas of Tokyo, but they seemed especially aggressive here. I've heard stories about what they do in their bars. They essentially lure you in, force you to buy extremely expensive drinks, or drug you and bully you into going to the ATM. Anyway, we told them that we're not interested, and they generally left us alone. One guy, though, who followed us for a while, seemed to be very persistent about us going to his club. I said, maybe later, fully intending just to get him to go away. A few hours later, we were quite drunk at this particularly dirty bar called Gas Panic, and I began dancing with a young lady. It was all in good fun, until a hand grabbed my arm. It was the large Nigerian guy from the street. He told me, "It's time to come to my bar now," and started pulling me with an iron grip. I looked around for my friends, but they were nowhere in sight. He was giving me a pretty sinister look, and he was grabbing my arm so hard that I had a bruise later. Somehow I managed to pull free, but noticed 2 other dudes closing in and sort of screening me from most of the dance floor. Suddenly, a large Japanese bouncer from the club came up to me and pointed to the exit. It was at that point when the bouncer was exchanging words in Japanese with the big Nigerian dude that I began to realize that they were in collusion. They were going to throw me out of the bar and I would be alone on the street with 3 Nigerian dudes. So before they could finish talking, I quickly bolted out of the front door and down a dark street side, made some obscure turns, and found a shady place to hide until I could get my friends to meet up with me. I don't know what those guys had planned, but at the very least, they would have robbed me. Given the amount of time the guy kept track of me, I imagine it could have been way worse. Hey everyone, I hope you enjoyed today's stories. I want to give a very special thank you to Lazy Masquerade for teaming up with me on this video. He's pretty much one of my main inspirations and somebody that I look up to here on YouTube, and it was a real honor having him on my channel. If you guys missed out on the collaboration I did with him on his channel, I'll leave a link to that below in the description. Lazy, myself, and Let's Read did some Glitch in the Matrix stories, and I think that video turned out great. And I'm sure a lot of you know who Lazy Masquerade is, but for the off chance if you don't, I'll leave a link to his channel in the description, and I highly recommend that you check it out. He's one of the best in the business. So thanks again guys for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and always remember, the best things happen in the dark. Whoops, my mistake. I meant to say, there's always a reason.